Oops, my mic was muted. Hello, and welcome to the Modern Romantic Podcast, where we celebrate romanticism by featuring incredible people doing really cool things. Today, first of all, I'm Emily, and I'm your host today because Trey is gone. He is working on his play. I believe he has a show today, right now, that is happening, which is Murder on the Orient Express in Charlotte, North Carolina. So, good luck, Trey. Break a leg. I know you're not supposed to say good luck, are you? I hope I didn't just wreck that. I'm going to go with break a leg, and I can't wait to hear how it went. So, we'll see him next time. He'll be able to join us because the play will have wrapped by then. Anyway, today I'm really excited to introduce our guest, who is Maija Lukin, an artist, teacher, and advocate from Kotzebue, Alaska. She brings together creativity, culture, and deep connection, especially to her land, and everything she does. Welcome, Maija. Thanks for coming to the
Thank you.
show.
Thanks.
I am so excited to talk to you. I wanted to for years, and I admit that I didn't have the guts to ask. And I don't know, you posted something on Facebook recently, and I was like, okay, I'm going to just do it because you do such cool things.
Thank you. I'm so um what's the word for easy to say yes to do things. I don't know the word for that.
You're
Amenable.
a yes
Fun.
person, right?
Yes.
That's great. Well, and it's interesting. Oh,
Approachable.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just thinking out loud. Approach now.
Approachable? Yeah. I would say so now that I've done it. You're like, yes, I'd love to talk about art.
Yeah.
So, gosh, you do so much, especially with making things and creating garments. And I feel like everything you do is somehow creative. Um, how do you describe that?
Um, Realistically, I didn't think about what I do as art or creative because I think it's just something we just do it, right? Like making fur hats and mittens and parkas and mukluks. It's just something that we do. It's not necessarily considered for in kind of in our world, I guess, not necessarily considered art. And so it took to probably to be an adult to just to think, you know what, this really is artistic. This is, the measurements, the designs, etc. It is art, and it took me a while to appreciate kind of what was passed down to me. And so, if I were to maybe in a nutshell say why I feel like it's creative, it's we have to be creative with very little things, right? So you don't have a lot of stuff to play with, so you make Smurf villages out of blue flowers, rocks, and mushrooms. And you make beautiful hats out of materials that you find in the land. So,
I love that. That's, I don't know, to me, that's kind of how it should be.
yeah.
And especially when you're a kid, when you go make like daisy chains and
Mhm.
things from clovers and things like that. That's kind of where you start learning
I
some of
was,
that.
I was, I appreciated the probably 10 years ago there was a kind of a resurgence of let's make fairy houses, and I was thinking I did that every day of my life because that's really all you could do was make fairy houses out of the stuff that you could find outside in nature, whether regardless of whether I was in Sisolik or Kotzebue or in Loon. It was fairy house central. So my kids were able to do that, and I thought that was amazing that I could do that with, even though it didn't seem like it was that big of a deal. It was for me.
Yeah, for sure. Do you still have some?
Well, they're meant to be made out of natural materials that degrade over time, right?
Oh,
So we
sure.
kind of make fairy houses and put them in Kotzebue and Sisolik. We would put near willows and things like that, and up in Chickaloon or here we put them near trees. So
Hmm.
no, we don't have any because we didn't use any unnatural materials, I should say. So
Sure. So yeah, they would break down, especially through the winter and the harsh
summer
snow and
fairy
all of
house.
that. Summer fairy houses. That's their summer home.
Yeah.
I love that. Um, and there's one thing we didn't talk about right at the beginning that I kind of wanted to, and I don't want to miss it because I feel like it's kind of important to your approach as well. and that is you let's talk about your heritage. You are a native,
Yes, indigenous
indigenous,
Alaskan.
thank you. And okay, I wanted to make sure you were from Alaska. I wanted to be sure that I got it right. So
Yeah.
tell us about that. You're
Um, I am. I know blood quantum is a kind of a no-no conversation because it's a something that was pushed down on indigenous people. But I am
okay.
extremely proud of both my heritage, both sides of my heritage. And one is I'm half Inupiaq from Northwest Alaska. It's where about 600 generations or so of my family come from above the Arctic Circle, near the Seward Peninsula, the Baldwin Peninsula, and the near Cruise National Monument. And then I'm also half Suomi and Sami. My father's side comes from Finland, the Finland area. And thanks to Ancestry DNA, we were able to find out exactly where the Sami heritage comes from.
Cool.
So I will say we did find out that our ancestors are all from the Arctic Circle. None of them are not from the Arctic Circle. And so when people say things like, "Oh, I wish I could live in Hawaii," I think I could visit there, but I don't think I could live there, and I feel like it's in my DNA. So I will add that I grew up in Northwest Alaska, in Kotzebue and Sisolik, and so the kind of, I don't know if expertise is the right, the culture that we practiced the most was Inupiaq, living with our grandparents, living with our parents, or extended family, cousins, and so that's the side that I am most familiar with. But we've had a really great time relearning Suomi and Sami heritage and exactly where we're from, figuring out the designs and kind of the tapestries that come from there. I'm not really wonderful at the weaving yet, but I'm trying.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that you were able to find all that out. And I ask these questions out of respect because if I've learned nothing from this show, it's that we I guess I'm not going to say this well, but I'm going to say it. We can't be. Knowledge makes us. Knowledge builds community, and knowledge makes us closer. And so we've never interviewed an Alaskan on our show, or anyone with your heritage with that combination. There are probably very few with that exact combination, but I wanted to ask about that because it does reflect in what you do, and like you said, the patterns and weaving and things like that, but also because asking questions is where it starts. And so I wanted to inform our audience about you and your background a little bit so that they can learn, because it isn't every day we get to talk to somebody who can skin a seal.
Oh, you know what? I just got asked to skin a seal. I was busy and I couldn't do it. Even though I live in urban America now, I feel like it's not that urban, but yeah. I
Right.
will. The thing is, you said it was going to air in Minnesota. There are a lot of Scandinavian people in the Midwest, Minnesota, Wisconsin area. So I do have some family in Wisconsin. My
Oh,
dad spent a lot of time in near Lake Superior.
okay. Yeah.
And so I visit a couple of years ago. They had a family reunion, etc. So there are still family members that are near Wisconsin and Minnesota. And there's, whenever I go there, I always feel like I'm home. I don't know if it's because it reminds me of Alaska or if it just is very similar in the Scandinavian heritage.
That could be. That could be. We've been to Duluth a lot. I'm more in central Minnesota now, but Duluth feels, well, it's a very artsy area, and that's a place that kind of feels like home to me to a degree. And I lived in Wisconsin for a while too, but south near Hudson. Um, but yeah, that area, it is very Scandinavian for sure. We say a lot of oofda and yae and things like
Yeah,
that. Look,
yeah.
we've pulled from all over though, like Canadian and but yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, for sure. Listen to me.
we, we say yeah for both of my backgrounds.
Sure. I remember my grandma saying no ya and ya no interchangeably. And you weren't sure if she was agreeing or not.
It's in the
That's
eyes, I
great.
feel like.
Probably,
Yellow and
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Do you want a little dessert with that? No, yeah. What? Yeah, you kind of just have to be around it to know. So, and speaking of skinning a seal, let's go back to that for a second. Um, I remember you posting something on social media a while back about how it's possible, and if you don't want to share this, this is fine. It That's something that you do because you use a lot of the different parts of the animal to create things. And but it's something that skinning specifically, or at least maybe harvesting specifically, is something that few people can do, but you are one that can. But it's more than just ability. What is that?
well, the Marine Mammal Protection Act was passed in 1972. I could do a little lesson about that, but
If you'd like to.
marine mammals, including seals, yeah, marine mammals, including seals and polar bears and sea otters and whales, they're all protected by the Marine Mammal Protection Act, but there's a provision in the act that says that anyone who's over 1/4 blood quantum indigenous from the coast can hunt, harvest, process the marine mammals, and so up in and here I live in the south central area of Anchorage, and there's a lot of seals and sea otters here too, near Whittier, Valdez, and you have to be a quarter native, and it's you have to be a quarter indigenous from that area. I mean, living in the area. There's the provision of the Marine Mammal Protection Act says you have to be a quarter native and live within a certain mile of the coast. So 30 miles. I think it's
Okay,
30 miles. Don't quote me on that. I could look it up real quick,
that's
but
fine.
you do have to live on the coast, and so
Okay.
um, there's a lot of work with the U.S. the regulatory agency for Marine Mammal Protection Act. To give the ability to tribes, federally recognized tribes in Alaska, to monitor and create plans for that. There's co-management here, so there's the Nanut Co-Management Council, the Eskimo Whaling Commission. There's multiple different councils. And those co-management councils also work with the federal agencies to enforce those federal regulations, and they work with the communities that are most affected. And so, like the Nanut Commission, it would be kind of around the Seward Peninsula, which is kind of near Nome-ish, north, for anywhere that could or would or has historically harvested polar bears. Same for the Eskimo Whaling Commission.
Mm-hmm.
The communities that are affected who have historically or currently whales are on that commission, and so they work together to figure out the best harvestable surplus. And so when we talk about in terms of art, right? Because this is a
Right.
this is a
Yeah.
podcast that are having because of art. When we talk about art, I can harvest a seal, I can eat the seal, and I can tan the skin, own that either raw skin, or I can, as an indigenous person with at least a quarter, I'm half, but at least a quarter blood quantum from the coast, I can then utilize that raw fur and make it into artwork. So a fur hat, and actually, I just found these. And
Ooh.
I made a bunch of sealskin ornaments
Oh yeah.
for the park superintendents in Alaska, because I love the Park Service, and I just felt like they needed a pick me up when certain things
Yeah.
happen.
Right.
So here's Katmai, and it's a bear, and it's seal. This is Kenai Fjords, and it's a sea lion. And this is Glacier Bay, which is a whale. And then there's moose, and
Oh
that
sure.
is for, I believe, Yukon Charlie. There's a caribou, which I'm from Northwest Alaska, so this is for Western Arctic National Park lands, and I didn't think anyone would know what it was, so I added a little antler detail. But so, this is a puffin for.
Yeah.
Actually, I think This is for Kenai Fjords, and the other one was for Klondike. But this puffin is, at Kenai Fjords National Park, you can go to the Sea Life Center and see a bunch of puffins. You can see them flying around. So I just figured things that reminded me of those places. That's what they were getting. This is a raven for
Oh, I love that.
And so that raw seal material, you have to be quarter native to utilize things like that. And so it's like a sticky situation and not a lot of enforcement of it. I mean, there's enforcement if you're selling it online and things like that. There's ways to enforce who has raw seal skin and who has raw sea otter, etc. But I think that, realistically, the tribes are going to do the best enforcement because largely historically ensure for the last 10,000 years, the successful continuation of resources, which includes marine mammals. So for future generations, right? So when I have conversations about cutting a seal skin. We went to Nikaicho de Servate, which is the preschool in Kotzebue, Alaska. It's an immersion school for Inupiaq speakers. Frequently we'll see a moose or a caribou or a seal dropped off. And so those children are able to harvest or process that seal with people that in the community, like myself, like a lot of family members that I know. So we can teach them the traditional way to process it, to prepare it, to eat, to store it, etc., but also to make art out of it.
Wonderful. I love that that's being passed down and being used as learning as well.
Yeah.
That's great.
And that's how we learned. I mean, that's the way that we learned, the way that my parents learned, my grandparents, and so on and so forth, was actually doing the processing and the storing and the sewing and learning how to make patterns using your hand, using measurements that were more traditional. I do, however, use measuring tape now. But also sometimes I use a string because I can't find a measuring tape all the time, but I can always find a string and I will mark on it what it is.
That's really a great method to use. Being a sewer, a sewist as well. I have been known to use various tools like that. It comes to here on my pen. That's good enough.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. I use my fingers all the time, and now I have these traditional markings, and I'm like, ooh, it's between this one.
That's really handy. Well, I wanted to talk about that alongside the art and the responsibility of, I guess, of doing it right and doing it legally, because we encourage people to dive into art, and we encourage and inspire people to go do different things. And I didn't want to just encourage someone to go slaughter a seal without knowing about why this is important to talk about as well, because there's more to it than just being able to go and make seal art. So I wanted to make sure that was something that we talked about a little bit. But this is an art podcast, you're right, and thank you for bringing it back to that. I would like to discuss the rest of your art as well. But what are some things that you make with seal besides the cute bear
ornaments?
And ornaments? Thank you.
Is largely fairly windproof, and so we use it for fur hats a lot. We use it for mucklucks. If it's not commercially tanned, you can still have a waterproof muckluck, which is the boot. But a lot of times we just commercially tan them, which kind of strips away all that natural oil. So there aren't a lot of people that I know that are traditionally tanning seals, but we've traditionally tanned seals forever. We use the brain, we use Tide, the old white granulated
Oh
Tide
yeah.
mixed with the brain, or sometimes we use sourdough, so you can put sound there and then use a scraper and scrape it to get a lot of the membrane on the back off so it doesn't rot. And so sealskin is also sealskin can be used. You can take the hair off, and it's used for a rope.
Oh.
It will not break. So
Oh
depending
wow.
on what you're pulling in, well, depending on the seal and depending on what you're pulling in, you can make a rope that will pull up a whale, right? So
Wow.
you have to think about what was used back then
Mm-hmm.
and what's used now. I a rope, but I don't know where it is in my. This is my office slash sewing room, and if you were to see that, there's 50 furs over there, and there's sealskin right behind me, actually.
Oh sure. Look at that.
But yeah, there. I mean, now a lot, and the thing is, we try to use every single tiny bit, and I should have wore some earrings that depicted that, but even the tiniest piece of sealskin can be used to make kind of a shape, and then you beat around the ulu shape, and then you put it on an earring hook, and it's an ulu earring made out of sealskin. The tiniest piece of sealskin can be used for sealskin is, if you look at the fur, so it's
Okay.
fur. Seals have fur. Um, the hair follicles are really straight, and so
Mm-hmm.
we will use them for doll eyelashes because they look perfectly like
Oh,
eyelashes. A lot of times they'll use them for some male kavlu. What are
eyebrows.
these? Eyebrows. Thank you,
Yeah.
in English. So they'll use them for eyebrows. You can. We don't throw anything away. Let's just be honest right there. We
I
throw
love
nothing
that.
away. We use the teeth, the seal teeth for earrings. We use the claws for earrings. You also use the claws to make scratchers for the ice when we're hunting seals, things like
Oh,
that. So, yeah, sealskin is, if you were to purchase it legally, purchase an Alaska native, because the Marine Mammal Protection Act also states that you can't transfer marine mammals across countries. In Canada, anyone can buy seals, anyone can process them. They're $80 a pelt in Canada. In the United States, the it's between $400 to $700 a skin. So you know it's a high demand item that not a lot of people can utilize because of the marine, but it also is, I mean, because it's just highly regulated here. But it's also just something that I'll have, I don't want to say a lot of people like me, but a lot of people that I know just kind of have a lot of sealskin in a bag. I do have a seal shirt on, I will say that.
oh yeah.
I made this shirt too.
Oh, how did you do that? Is it screen printed?
I, yeah, I taught a class on carving, I don't know what it's called, carving linoleum.
Oh,
What is
so
that?
it's like a print.
Yeah, and then I sewed this shirt because I wanted a shirt that went underneath my look for work, but I also wanted it to be
With
sort of
seals.
traditional. so I
Yeah,
so I have seal across the back and then across the bottom. So
that's wonderful.
yeah, they're. I mean, seals are a big part of our part of our culture, artistically, nutritionally, and culturally, and so they're a big. We try to take care of seals. We try to ensure that we're respectful, and part of being respectful to seals is that we use absolutely every piece. I mean, every single piece. I could get a little Ziploc, a tiny Ziploc of scraps, and someone would be like, "I'll take it. I need it. I'm gonna make this. I'm making this. I'm making this." And so, yeah.
I love hearing that. That's near and dear to my heart too. I've always thought that being able to try to use in any hunting, in any kind of harvesting of another living creature, using every part that you can made sense. And so I that's one thing that lots of respect for you for that. I think that's how it should be.
Thanks. I mean, it's something that's learned, right? It's
Yeah.
something that it's not practiced because somebody said you need to respect the animal and use every piece. It's practiced because my mom used every piece and my grandmother, my aunts and used every piece because they were usable and because it's respectful. So it's not, we're not we're not standing in front of a classroom saying you must respect a seal. We're out in the country respecting a seal.
Yep. Exactly. Did you make your earrings?
I did not. These are from Canada. They're really. I'm gonna figure out how to make them, but yeah,
They're really
they're
neat.
Canadian comic. Uh,
I'm sorry, it cut out for a second. Can you say that again?
they're Canadian comic mucklucks. They're just
Okay.
like boots, but they call them
Yeah.
comics, and we actually call them comics too. But we kind of have used the slang mucklucks just because that's what a lot of people use.
Mm-hmm.
But traditionally, they're called comics in our language also.
Okay. I love learning that. Thank you. And you teach art in many different ways as well. What else? I mean, what other art do you
I
do?
do.
Or is there an art that you love teaching and love doing like the most? Is there one that you just
Oh, there is not one that I just love. I feel like I love to teaching anything
Okay.
to anyone, and I really mean, aside from me being an artist, I also wrote federal regulations for a long time. I understand the federal system, I management system, and completely understand subsistence resources and subsistence regulations here in Alaska. And taught a lot of federal Indian law. And so, aside from that, like teacher for anything is something that I really, really get joy out of, right? It kind of fills my cup.
Yeah.
And so there isn't kind of an art form that I love teaching the best, but I will say when when disconnected, and I'm not using that in a bad way, but when disconnected youth and adults even who have suffered from their parents were taken to boarding school and then they never somewhere else, and they don't have a connection to their traditional homelands, but they still they're trying to reconnect with their homelands, and they take a class like skin sewing, like baby mukluk making. With my sister and I both teach that, or fur hat making questions, and they're able to do these things. That's, I think, my favorite thing to do is to reconnect indigenous people with a heritage that has been taken away from them for thousands of generations. And so people are negative towards Ancestry DNA and 23andMe because people have your DNA, and I just think, you know what, that I understand where they're coming from, but a lot of people didn't know their history and they didn't know their heritage until they took Ancestry DNA, or they did 23andMe, and they were able to see, my parents are indigenous from a certain area, and I didn't understand that because they never talked about it, because they weren't going to talk about it because of the atrocities that took place. And so my favorite teaching, or what kind of fills my cup the most, is reconnecting people with cultures that have been taken away or lost. So that's, yeah, I think that, and helping federal employees understand federal law from an indigenous standpoint.
That's really valuable. Yeah, all of that. I did a DNA test. My sister gave me one. And I kind of thought I didn't care until I read it. And then I was like, oh, this actually opens up a lot of things. Now we have things to talk about that we didn't know. And I think
Hmm.
there's some power in that. And
Yeah.
I love the idea of reconnecting with that, and that you have the ability and you are hands on doing that with people, which it
Mhm.
almost, the way you tell it almost sounds like a form of healing that's happening.
I mean, I feel like it is. It's, we talk about reciprocity, and there's no, and I mean, we're really like the United, right? And so I don't feel like this form of teaching or learning when you're reconnecting is extractive. I do feel like it's a form of like coming full circle and reconnecting to something that shouldn't have been taken away in the first place, but was.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have any, people sometimes say like this might be a silly question. I don't think there's any silly questions because I really think that um, people really want to learn about their culture, and we people like me who experienced growing up with their grandparents and aunts and uncles who very clearly off the land, very clearly had that had that responsibility to our family. Now that I have excuse me, now that I have the tool voice, I feel like it is a responsibility of mine to help other people and to reconnect the other people to things that they've lost.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have the ability to do that easily, like through Zoom, through Teams, through free classes, then and feel good about it.
I think you should. I think that's great. When you, because you've been involved with leadership and artistry and tradition with sewing and crafting and all kinds of art, even to managing parklands, how do you see creativity showing up every day in like everyday work of preserving culture and community? I know that you said something at the beginning like, oh, these are just things we do. I never thought of them as creative or artistic, but they are. Is there something that you see that now or
I, I don't know if I see that now. I, I
or
do feel
have? Yeah,
like
sorry.
I feel like there are support systems, areas that support kind of that healing, that teaching, that learning, and then there are times that it's not supported.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will talk about a little bit about what I mean, I guess. So I'll give you an example. As a park manager for Western Arctic National Parklands, previous park manager, um, one of the one of the things that we implemented was wearing a traditional, it's called a atiklik or a kaspak in Alaska, which is traditionally what a indigenous person would wear, but modernized, right? So we're taking
Okay.
our old tools or historic items and we're modernizing them for the 2020s.
Sure.
And so we pretty much everyone wears atikluks for formal gatherings. For like my husband wore one when we got married. All, all the atikluks. The governor wears them for press conferences, and so it's a modern take on a traditional item. And in the park service, they're right. The park rangers wear that uniform and they have that flat hat, and it's a symbol of certain things
Yeah.
that has down for 100 years. Well, we said, listen, in Northwest Alaska, the flat hat doesn't mean what it means in, I don't know, at Yosemite. Okay, it does not mean what it means at Yosemite because in Northwest Alaska, the enforcement of people feeding their family prior to the Marine Mammal Protection Act and the Alaska Migratory Co-Management Council and all those federal regulations was a flat hat, arresting our family.
Mm.
And so, and that's not history. That's right. I was alive when this was happening. And I feel like I'm not that old. And
No.
so, so we took that kind of stigma of the flat hat and we combined it with an atikluk, and we created a park service inspired, that green that we wear, the pine cone, etc. And we very slowly integrated. So we wore the atikluk. That was our uniform in Northwest Alaska. that was an approved uniform by the Secretary of the Interior, and by the region, and then we slowly integrated like the flat hat or a a Park Service logo that we had to get approved, to put on our uniform, and so it utilizing art in a way to heal. That's one way in federal system of oppressed Indigenous people, utilizing Indigenous art in a way that was positive and going into the community and being positive with that to heal communities. Aside from that, we taught, because I was superintendent there, we taught a lot of classes that were Indigenous, Alaska Native art. So we made mucklucks. Everybody in the staff made their own mucklucks, fur hats, etc. So all of these things that I grew up with, not necessarily thinking they were art, but more functional pieces, then became, Alaska Native art that we could perpetuate with federal employees, with community members, and it was community as well. So we had baby muckluck class, we had, fiber arts, beaded name tags, just a lot of different ways to utilize a Park Service kind of outline, because value system is very similar to Indigenous people's outline, and have a Indigenous, I guess, learning activity with the community. And so I think art can be used negatively in certain ways, like propaganda. But I also think that there's a lot of healing that takes place if you have people who understand the true history of certain things, like how to make a fur hat and why you make them. We did ruff making, and I know in the Midwest you'll know what a fur ruff is, but we did ruff making, and then I taught the knowledge on why we have a tiny strip of wolverine on the inside, and that's because wolverine doesn't frost. They have an oil on their skin, doesn't allow it to frost. So when it's next to your face won't frost. And then why we have wolf, or I guess in other places it would be coyote, but wolves have really long guard hairs, and their guard hairs create a negative space here. So when it's 30 below and you have your ruff up, there's a negative space here that your breath kind of stays here. So it's at least 10 to 15 degrees warmer right here next to your face than it would be if your ruff was down. And so we were able to teach Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous science, and utilize all of those, I guess, combinations of both, Western science and Indigenous knowledge put together in a form of art that gets people together.
Mm-hmm. Oh, what a cool thing. I love that. It gets to where, like, in a way, art is survival.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I
think
it.
it's not just survival. I think it's also being able to adapt. What there's thrown around, and I don't want to say willy-nilly, because that's not what I'm really trying to say, but like resilient. Indigenous people are so resilient, and I understand that, and I fully agree with that. But I also think that it is the ability to adapt and to appreciate, I guess, the evolving tools that we have, right? So I had a conversation with an elder, I don't want to say recently, about 2 years ago. I had said we're teaching a traditional sewing class, and she said it's not traditional if you're using dental floss and metal needles. I said, okay, I understand where you're coming from. That could be true. We're not using bone needles, and we're not using the sinew from a tendon of a caribou. However, the materials don't make it untraditional. The teaching style, pattern making, the way that we sew, the words that we use, they're all traditional, and that is still traditions passing going forward. And the other thing is, if we were still using bone needles and caribou sinew, we wouldn't have the ability to teach this many people, because nobody has a bird rib cage that they can use to make a needle, and not a lot of people know how to use, not take the tendon out of the back of a caribou and then dry it and then pull it into sinew. So if we have to use dental floss as an adaptation and a Glover needle as an adaptation to a bone needle, it's still traditional in my, I guess, my sense. And while we're teaching, we have the ability to say, before there were metal Glover needles, we used the rib cage of a bird and we would sharpen it. Or we used kind of a awl and then we just, sewed it, how thick the skin was. And then this is how we take a caribou tendon out. And so if opportunity to adapt and evolve, then we wouldn't have been very resilient.
Right. A bird cage rib sounds so delicate. I can't
Yeah.
imagine trying to sew with that. That's amazing. And you mentioned writing before, how you've written, been involved with writing different things regarding policy and things like that. But you've also written a book about creating.
Yes, I
Tell
have.
us about that.
Well, I didn't intend to write a book. And I know when somebody says you wrote a book, I feel like I did not write a novel where I poured over it for 3 years.
That's
I
okay.
wrote. I know. I feel like I can't be put into like an author yet. Let's just say yet. Um,
Okay.
'Cause I
Yet.
do love writing. I write all the time. I have a blog that only I read because I'm the only one that has access to it. I write all the time. Sometimes I post it on social media. Sometimes I used to have a blog that was public. There's lots of writing examples in there also. But I think for the book that I created, it's called Create Like an Inupiaq. I think if I have one in here, maybe not. It's called Create Like an Inupiaq, and the way that came about, when I think about ways to perpetuate Indigenous art, my expertise is skin sewing mucklucks and mittens and fur hats and creating things out of cloth that mimic indigenous things that were maybe created out of seal guts. And so I used to write out instructions, and I guess I could say I'm a very fairly good artist, so I would also write out, draw out exactly what I was saying. So like making
Okay.
an draw out the pattern piece and draw out where you were supposed to sew, etc. And so I did that for multiple different projects, separate projects, not at all meant to be put together at all. And then there was a time in Northwest Alaska, people were giving away salmon and they didn't understand how to fillet a salmon with an ulu. And so I drew out a way to fillet a salmon with an ulu. And one of my friends, Audrey Lee, said, "I don't understand why you don't put olives in a book." And I said, "That's so silly. I could never do that." And she said, "Look, she said, I have collected every single one of your instruction sheets. And I could right now take it to a publisher and say, just copy this." And I said, "Huh, that's funny. I should think about that." And it was a month till AFN, the Alaska Federation of Natives Conference. And so
Okay.
I said, "You know what? I'll do it. I'll do it. Let's just do it." And so then I wrote it out and I typed it out and I put in my drawings and I hated it. I did not like the way that it looked
Oh.
with typed instructions and then my drawings. And Audrey mentioned, she said, "Your handwriting is artistic. Just leave your handwriting in there." And I thought, nobody will purchase this. Nobody want to buy a book that I hand wrote drawings. And I I ordered, I think I ordered 1,000 copies and they sold out in a day and a half. So my daughter does sell them. We did get them reprinted multiple times. They're in black and white now because it was just, it was just crazy. For the first printing, I included 4 or 5 patterns in there. But one of the things that we do is I have a pattern for every single sealskin slipper, moccasin, mitten, fur hat, muck, and utikluk for age preemie to double X, XX
Wow.
large.
That's
And
quite a collection.
she sells those patterns, and she doesn't. It's not necessarily selling the patterns; it's the work that it takes for her to take a pattern, be it. And so we also sell the book on her website, and I think it's Alus AHLUS patterns at squarespace.com. I think,
Can you say that again?
or aluspatterns.squarescom.
Okay, can you spell the first part for
Yes.
me?
Let me actually make sure that I'm doing it right.
Because I want I want our audience to be able to go see it too and order or whatever.
It is. I mean, sorry, I have bifocals and I have to look like this.
That's all right. I got the part and then
It's the HTTPS
yeah.
/ AHLUSPATTERNS dot
Okay.
squarespace.com.
Okay. And if you Google AHLUS patterns, you might find it that way too. But go check that out.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
So
And
so she sells all those patterns and she hand copies every single one and hand writes them. I think it's we've a lot of places said, you can digitize these, and her and I have talked about it multiple times. She's Alu is her Inupiaq name, and my mom's Alunik, so she's named after my mom, and her mom's Katak named after her, and her mom's Alunik, so it goes kind of down, and the name is Katak also. But it's things that we decided against digitizing them, not for any reason besides it takes away kind of the personal feel if you have a handwritten pattern. And that's what I remember when I was at my aunt's house, my grandmother's house, where we were learning how to make patterns, and we made them out of paper bags or like cereal boxes, and we used the exact same thing. And so she makes them out of paper bags and cereal boxes and other boy cracker boxes, and so she will copy whatever she has onto those patterns, and then she will handwrite exactly what to do, and then she mails.
So incredible.
It's one of those, yeah. And I know that we laugh about it because I have digitized multiple patterns. Isn't that hard? And we could have zero, what is it called? It's passive income because we don't really have to do anything.
Right.
Like, there's no physical labor to do these things. But I just feel like it takes away from the connection that you have with especially Indigenous patterns and patterns we have. And so maybe someday, I know people do sell digital patterns. That's great for them. I just, for her and right now, and for her, she will copy these patterns for you. And from the patterns that I have made, my grandmother has made, my mother has made, and then they'll come to you looking just like they did with ours, and you can stick them in your little Swedish butter cookie jar, or tin, with your sewing kit. I almost knocked my computer over. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. It's part of the experience of it all that I think is fabulous, and that makes me want it more. I think that's great.
Yeah,
I bought digitized patterns before, and it's like, yeah, there's some work with printing it out on your printer and taping it all together, or whatever you're going to do. But like, I want one that's like on a cereal box or some brown paper bag. I think that's incredible. And there's a part of that is the romantic side of me loves that even more. Like, that's kind of how it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And nobody's complained about getting them that way, right?
No, they shouldn't. No, it's like being part of it more instead of washed by this digital experience instead.
Yeah. So
that is
the book,
amazing.
coming back to the book, that all the instructions for every one of those patterns is in that book. So she also
Okay.
sells the book because so the other thing is that, we could digitize the book and we could sell it for $5, $10, whatever. But we choose to use a small family owned printing company here, local to us. We really, really, one of the things that we, not just the artwork, when I teach classes, I only purchase items from local Alaskan or small businesses. And we use a local printing press, and it's a little bit more expensive. And so, I just tell people this is how you put money back to your community, and we're okay with that.
Yeah, and it's supporting small businesses down the line. Buying from you is a small business to a degree, and buying where you're buying from is a small business. I love that. That's
Yeah.
You're right. How it should be. Is there anywhere else? Oh, go ahead. I'm
Dogs
sorry.
barking because I see somebody coming in, and it's next door to me. So I apologize if you hear the
Oh,
dogs
that's
barking.
okay. I don't, but if we do, it's fine.
Okay.
Real life happens. We've had a lot of that happen on the show before. I have a cat that'll jump up on my desk right here sometimes, and thankfully that's not happened yet today. So where else online is there somewhere online that someone could follow what you do or see more? Do you have a social media that you share, or do you have a website or blog or something you'd like to share?
I have TikTok,
Oh, okay.
and I have Instagram, and I have Facebook, and I have an old blog in probably 10 years. However, I've left it up because I wrote in it for 10 years prior to that. And what happened was Facebook came out in 2009, 2010, and I wrote in that blog for a long time. Not and I wrote in the blog for my family. It was a way to keep my non-local family updated with our lives. It's kind of exotic, according to my grandmother, my Finnish grandmother. It was always exotic to find out that her kids were cutting seals.
Yeah, it
Um,
is.
so it was a way for us to keep, our kids and our doing. So it's finskamo.blogspot.com.
Okay.
And so that's up. And then I have so Facebook came out, and I started kind of slowly moving over and morphing over to Facebook. And then I found myself not writing in the blog, writing like updates on Facebook. And so I made the mistake of like my habit of dating my family was through Facebook instead of the blog. And so my Facebook is really now that's what we do almost every day. I would say like 60, maybe 50 to 60% of what we do is shared on Facebook. And I do want to caution people that like 50 to 60% of my Facebook is not 50% of my life, right? So don't be fooled by thinking that we do it all, because we don't. And then I have Instagram, and that's Finupiaq, Finnupiaq.
Okay.
My TikTok is the same, Finnup, Finupiaq, because I'm half Finnish, half Inupiaq. And my TikTok actually has a lot of traditional art, traditional ways to gather, to hunt, to process, including how to take the tendons of the back of a caribou, including how to make, see if I have any in this window. Excuse me, how to make rattles out of ptarmigan, how to cut a wolf for a ruff. I started it like a lot of people during COVID. And so in 2020, I started doing TikTok as a way to kind of connect with people and share like indigenous knowledge in terms of sewing and processing. And so that is on there. So I have that TikTok, and then I have Instagram, and it's just, I don't share a lot of like videos or anything on Instagram. It's just on Instagram. And if you want to see good food and me chopping wood, That's where you're gonna find it.
I'll agree with the
I
good work, the good food
only
comment.
Oh yeah. I also have a
Sorry.
blog that only I write in, and I mean only I read because I don't want other people to. It's like a journal.
Sure. Yeah. We all need that sometimes. Well, thank you for sharing all of that with us. Is there any parting words you would like to share with our audience about you or any of the work that you do?
I think my only parting words would be to try to keep on learning. Every day I try to learn something new about something that I'm not either an expert in or I haven't heard before, especially about other people's cultures. I'm very interested in other people's cultures and history and kind of how they live, how they've survived, how they've migrated, how they've come to be where they are. And I think people's history just has a lot to tell. And be I wouldn't be in my own in system if I didn't say to try really hard, especially right now, to be kind to everybody and to understand that there are a lot of things taking place that we don't see behind the scenes. 50 to 60% of my Facebook, that 40 to 50% isn't always great. And so just understanding that people are going through things. I lost my job recently, and there's a lot of people that kind of are struggling. And so just making sure that people are kind and understanding and maybe not things on that they shouldn't type. But on a positive note, just keep on learning, right? Just, try to learn something new every day, even if it's just a word.
That's really great advice. Thank you. Well,
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
thank you for being here. And before we sign off, I just want to remind our audience you can find us online at themodrom.com, on Patreon, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I think that covers it. And have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.